We have a special guest this week to tell us all about seeing the G1 Finals live and in person. We will also preview tomorrow's Capital Collision show from Washington, D.C. We'll take another look at the evolution of Hiroshi Tanahashi and answer any questions you might have, too. With Jeremy Finestone, I'm Stephen Conway. This is Speaking of Strong Style. Welcome, everyone, to Speaking of Strong Style, where we discuss the news, issues, and events surrounding New Japan Pro Wrestling. Jeremy, we had a week without any shows. I've been struggling to catch up with the 5-Star Grand Prix with Stardom and checking out some other things that fell behind while I was in the midst of all those G1 events. And with a little room to breathe, I've had time to reflect. I'm very much ready for Capital Collision tomorrow. And how are you feeling after a week where we were able to decompress a little after a very tight, condensed New Japan schedule?
Bro, I watched almost no wrestling besides AEW All In. I watched Batman Caped Crusader, The Boys, a couple other shows. I damn near finished Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. I took advantage of this time off of not watching any wrestling, and honestly, I feel pretty good going into Capital Collision. I don't feel like it's the biggest show in the world, but it's nice to get back in the swing of things. New Japan get back underway after it's been kind of a, quiet week besides the all-in appearances of a couple of familiar folk.
Yeah, it's an intriguing card. Like you said, maybe not the most consequential thing in the world, but there are some interesting matches and interesting people on it. People I've wanted to see in the New Japan ring for a while, which we're going to get to when we preview that. Colin is here. Colin, good to see you. Glad you're with us. And
I will tell you that Capital Collision card had a match or two on there that we kind of started leaning towards, but when we get there later on today, I feel like it has Wrestle Kingdom implications.
Okay. Well, there could be a few things like that on there. It's all in the service of Wrestle Kingdom now. Everything that goes on in New Japan really is in service of Wrestle Kingdom. It's time to start setting things up, which is an exciting time of year. We discussed last week that we don't know any of the matches. Even after the G1, we don't know what the Tokyo Dome main event is like we usually do. So it's all up for grabs, and we're going to be watching all that develop over the next few months. So maybe this will be less of a dead period than it has been in previous years, which is a nice thought going into autumn.
Yeah, the road to Wrestle Kingdom feels more prevalent this year than ever before. And we harped on that, touched on that as well a little bit last week. There hasn't been a whole lot of real news that happened from this week to last week. So we're just kind of almost more cemented in the things that we thought about because we had you had time to marinate on a few things, but now that the card is getting closer and you just kind of look at the landscape for New Japan, all of a sudden, it feels like things are coalescing, even though nothing has happened. It's just the time has just kind of allowed things to just okay, we have thought these things out in a certain sort of way. These are directions that they're going, and they're fascinating, but we actually just have to sit and watch it play out at this point.
Yeah, and I'm very curious to see what kind of attendance they get for this show, too. It looks like, according to WrestleTix, which is my go-to source for stuff like this, 1,700 tickets have been distributed so far, and the building is currently set up for about 2,500 at the Entertainment and Sports Arena in Washington, D.C. So still plenty of tickets left, but a decent crowd, 1,789.
Yeah, they are working on making sure that Leo Rush is there, who's a DMV native. So they're doing what they can to get the local crowd out there and advertise. And Mercedes is huge in Baltimore. So it's not completely out of the question that they should be drawing as many people as possible. But, when Mercedes first came and she did the Battle in the Valley, they had no problem just selling that entire thing out. And now we're in a situation where we're a few matches in and she's not drawing, but is it because it's Mercedes or because people are unfamiliar with her opponent? Or is it just a number of factors that this may not have been the location that they should have gone back to?
Yeah, it's tough one. I mean, Washington, D.C., I don't know how much of a draw that is in that sense, because I think the last one was in the Pyramid, right? Or wasn't it? Or that one where her first one. I'm trying to remember. I'm going
Battle
back.
in the Valley at San Jose at the San Jose Olympics.
Okay, San Jose. But that also had a lot on that card. I mean, she ended that card with Okada.
It was main evented by Tanahashi and Okada in one of their last matches, and she came out there and won and got the title at the time, which was the different one, the IWGP title.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was like, oh, we got to go see Mercedes at this New Japan show. And that same level of like demand may not be there right now because she's in a lot of places. You can see her on AEW. You can see her on these shows. They're not necessarily sure it's the big match that you need to see her have, other than just like, Mercedes is going to be here. Is that enough to get you in the door?
Yeah, and you can only debut once. You can only have your very first match once. And so that was its own novelty at the time. So a little different now. Yeah. So, I mean, do we want to just go ahead and start previewing Capital Collision? Do we want to go to what do you want to do?
Well, we have a guest that we are going to be waiting on who's that we are going to be joined by. His name is Larry Sternshein, and he is from the Real Early podcast, which is a movie podcast. But he went to the G1 semifinals and the finals. And when he joins us, we're going to pause what we're doing, and we are going to discuss with him his experiences, the time, what he thought, his wrestling pedigree, and all these things. And then we'll pick back right up into what we were doing. So maybe we can check some of these comments real quick. Mm-hmm. Colin Matthews says hello, and he does believe that Mercedes Mone versus Momo Watanabe is going to be awesome. No doubt. No doubt it will be a very good match. It is the awareness factor for most people. Like, is this a card that is going to get people to come out? Is this a main event draw? If it is it on Mercedes? That was the only thing that I was trying to say, is like, if she is going to be treated as the main event act, she has an accountability for when she is the main event and how well that the card does. And, you know, it's like, that's all I like. They're building this card around her. Like, she is the main event act.
It's intriguing to me too, because I know it's going to be compared to Windy City Riot, which isn't particularly fair. Chicago is a much hotter wrestling market than almost any other in the United States. It might be the hottest, and comparing it to that is tricky. I think back to the two New Japan Strong shows I saw last fall, one in Las Vegas and one here in Texas. Those each drew about 1,000. And you know that this is 1,700 in Washington. I'm taking that as a good sign. Like, Windy City Riot's a tough one to compare it to. That was a big show, big card, IWGP World Heavyweight Title match in the biggest wrestling city. You know, DC is a perfectly fine wrestling city. It was a big WWF town for a very long time there at the Capitol Center in Washington. And so it's a real wrestling town, but maybe not Chicago, the way things are here in 2024. But compared to last fall, and I know it's still summer, so the seasons aren't quite perfect, but that Vegas show, that Texas show, 1,000 people, and maybe not even. This is still a decent number of tickets sold for this one.
They're still rebuilding like the company and the brand and the image, and they're going to need people like Mercedes Mone. Driving her away and saying like, we don't need you is incorrect. They do need her. You know, it's how she's incorporated and how she's used. It was great on AEW Dynamite when Private Party like did their really silly backstage segment, but they at least mentioned on the show that she was going to be wrestling Momo Watanabe on Friday night in Washington, D.C. at Capital Collision, right in the middle of Dynamite. And then Okada came out and said the sayonara bitches line, and it all went to shit. But hey, for a minute there, they did. The job was done. Like they mentioned that their top star was defending one of her titles that they addressed. They showed the title on the stage, like on the backstage on a table. Like, they did everything they needed to do to check the boxes. They showed Takeshita G1 Climax highlights last night on AEW Dynamite. Like, I feel like there's a renewed effort. Like, we're going into it. So there's going to be an AEW presence on these domestic New Japan shows. You know, does it need to be more than Mercedes? Maybe. There were times where we had Moxley and Kingston and a couple other guys showing up to fill out these cards. But until the time that Yota Tsuji is fully arrived, Gabe Kidd, Shota Umino, Yuya Uemura, to the point that people are like, I gotta see these guys. I gotta see these guys in a domestic opportunity when they get a chance. They're going to have to be propped up by these stars, but the stars have to be in consequential feuds.
Let's take a look at the card, shall we? Let's get going with it.
Yeah, do it.
Let's bring it up. USVA guy is here. Venkin is here. Glad to see you guys. Yeah, and Venkin mentions Kingston's going to be a while. Yeah, thanks, Gabe. So let's take a look at this one. So we're starting off with a strong survivor match. Well, it was. It was
like,
it's true.
You got hurt in a Gabe Kidd match. They made a mistake in how like they went on the move.
I'm putting that squarely on. I'm putting it squarely on Gabe because Gabe was reckless with Eddie right there. He saw where he was in relation to the barricade and still did the damn move. And it's just there have been some frustrations I've had with Gabe in that he gets excited and then gets reckless with his opponent's bodies, which is not okay. But he's young, he's still working his way through things, still trying to find this character. But that's something that with the Hanare thing, where it was a very reckless throw of that table. Is there aren't many safe ways to throw a table, I'll grant you. Gabe did one of the worst and most dangerous I've ever seen, and it seriously damaged that man to the point that his career could have been over. He takes out Eddie for a year. So again, I know he's young, but let's just see if we can get Gabe to calm down and remember in these matches that your opponent's trusting you with this. You need to make that trust a part of your.
Simmer down a little bit here, man. Like,
yeah, and maybe stop taking people out for a year or maybe for
dial back the reality part of it and
yeah,
and then dial in the reality in a different aspect.
yeah, that's just it's not okay. It's not okay.
I hear what you're saying and I validate you.
Strong survivor match will open the card. This is Alan Breeze, the challenger in this one against Matt Vandegrift. We've seen Matt Vandegrift a bunch of times in these, and it's really just the strong survivor match is just the show opener to make sure all the cameras and microphones are working. I was thinking about this too, Jeremy. It's one of those deals where you have this match early in the card to kind of warm up the crowd, make sure all the gear is working. I'm hoping that maybe it actually does, because the production on NJPW strong events have been so low quality that it can sometimes be tricky to watch them, just because the crowd is almost always poorly mic'd. The room's always really dark. I'm hoping that maybe there's some improvement on that one, but either way, to me, these strong survivor things doesn't mean a lot. It's just a match to kind of get everything moving right there. Vandegrift is okay. We'll see how Alan Breeze does.
So this is the first kickoff match. There are 2 kickoff matches for the Capital Collision show, and we'll get to the next one in a second. I'm starting to wonder about this strong survivor gimmick. Like, at some point, Vandegrift is going to lose. Now, if he loses, shouldn't he be bumped off the show in general, or is he going to be moved up to the card and then be moved into like some type of tag that is like the second kickoff, or
that's
like
probably been
the show?
That's
but like,
probably what it'll be.
The concept in general is, because he survived so many times, like, he's clearly got something he can move on up. But if you lose, you should be gone as well.
Maybe so. I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's a King of the Mountain thing. So if you win this, you're on the next NJPW strong card, no matter what.
So just a reminder for everybody, we are in fact doing a Capital Collision live recap show immediately after Capital Collision tomorrow, which is August 30th, and it should be, we're guessing, around 8:30 Pacific, 11:30 p.m. Eastern, because the show goes live at like 7 p.m. Eastern. And if it's like a 4-hour show, that's kind of the vibe that we're setting. And we put a link for the show inside the show notes for this YouTube video. So if you need to find where that is. And also remember, if you want to watch Capital Collision, you have to find the link on X or on Capital Collision or whatever. Go to there, buy the pay-per-view on the web, and then you can watch it on your New Japan World account. It is completely convoluted, but remember, that is what you have to do to watch this show.
All right, so let's see. Oh yeah, Bacon mentions it's a 4-hour show, and I think the 5-star finals are Saturday, so it's going to be a big day for wrestling, no doubt about it. Yeah, these tend to go about 3.5, 4 hours easily. So let's see, what's the next one? Mina Shirakawa from Star. Speaking of Stardom, there you go. So these are the two women that really aren't part of the 5-star Grand Prix. Hanako, who's on an excursion to the United States. Mina Shirakawa, who's been working a lot with AEW. She's part of the peripheral of this Mariah May, Tony Storm storyline. They will be teaming up. So we have Team Stardom against Trish Adora and Viva Van.
Mina Shirakawa also, I believe, the Rev Pro Women's Champion as well.
That is true. Yeah, she did win that title over All In weekend.
So her worldwide takeover seems to be in full force. She charmed the wrestling world who are not already aware of her via her time in Stardom over this summer since Forbidden Door, and it continues here. And frankly, I kind of see her being a single title holder in New Japan Strong at some point in the near future.
Could happen. I mean, it definitely could happen. It's yes. She would be an interesting representative, and there is a off-screen factor coming up. We are now in the second half of 2024. Most people believe that the current IWGP women's champion, Mayu Iwatani, is probably going to leave Stardom to go join Marigold, because she and Rossi Ogawa, the founder of Marigold and the founder of Stardom also, but he left to start Marigold, have such a strong relationship that she wants out. Would have been out last year, except she signed a bit of a longer term deal than usual because she had the movie about her life, Runaway Wrestler, coming out. That means that we're going to need a new IWGP Women's Champion at some point in the next 6-ish months. We don't know exactly when her deal with Stardom is up, if she leaves. Most people think that she will. It's that she's only there to fulfill out the contract she currently has. So with that in mind,
right.
Mina is a strong candidate, pardon the pun, to take that title over. She's very charismatic. She is getting over with crowds in the United States. She's not unfamiliar. I think she's more familiar to a lot of people in the United States than Iwatani is. Iwatani's one of the best female wrestlers that's ever lived, and she's one of the best in the world, regardless of male, female, anything else. But Shirakawa has gotten herself over to the point that I don't think she's a bad idea to think about. Certainly a strong contender to be the next strong champion. It's somebody that you can...
Is Mayu is the IWGP Women's Champion, correct?
Mayu is the IWGP Women's Champion.
Is that one only defended in Japan?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, she has defended it in the United States. That has happened. I saw her defend it here in Dallas, but yeah, for the most part, it's defended in Japan. But I think
strong initiative, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is something you can definitely bring over.
I was like, I thought the IWGP was like the New Japan adjacent title that's in Stardom, that's only defended in Japan, which I got no issues if that's the case with her. But when was the last time that, because I don't follow Stardom, when was the last time Mayu Iwatani defended the IWGP Women's Championship?
I think she defended it against an ice ribbon champion or a wrestler. I think she defended it against an ice ribbon wrestler last month or so. I think that's on NJPW World. And she's had some defenses over there with these.
Okay. Because I didn't know if all of them were over there. It feels like the strong title is what they are dedicating as the singles title. So you got Mercedes Mone and you got Gabe Kidd as those title holders. And then the IWGP, which I guess is Naito and Mayu Iwatani, is what they're considering on that other level. I think Mina Shirakawa, frankly, could hold any one of those titles, and it would make sense. She could hold both of them, but I think that would muddy the waters a little bit with trying to make clear that there is a difference between the strong and the IWGP.
Yeah, I think Mercedes is probably going to hold on to this strong title for a while because they wanted to headline some of these shows. But for some reason, I mean, Mina could definitely come back into the United States, and now she works worldwide. Is all I'm saying right there. So she's not a bad idea. Mercedes should probably hold that strong title because she's a draw. Yeah,
she is. But she is on a short list of people that would probably be a fantastic candidate. But if Mercedes holds it for 8 months, if she holds it until the April or May or whatever, which totally a good time frame to put the prestige on it, do you think that they will have built up a viable person within these New Japan shows other than someone like Mina Shirakawa by that point.
Well, I mean, I think they have to be conscious of the fact that Mayu is likely to go to Marigold. So I think over the next few months, we will probably see some people come up for that. I mean, the other thing is, I mean, they could just keep it as a Japanese thing and they could do it within the canon of Stardom. There are so many great wrestlers within Stardom that could hold the title. I mean, and Tam Nakano has already been part of Wrestle Kingdom before. Starlight Kid has been part of Wrestle Kingdom before. So there are people that have been in front of New Japan audiences that are excellent wrestlers that could take that title from Mayu, perhaps. So I think we'll probably see something come up with that at Kingdom or Dynasty or something. Probably more Kingdom than Dynasty. It's an IWGP belt. But I think we'll be seeing something in the next few months. A real challenger for Mayu. And Mayu has had a series of opponents that she's almost certainly going to beat. She's been in jeopardy a couple of times. Sari was a big match for her. But I think we'll probably be seeing somebody who's a real threat come up and challenge her in a few months to get set up for that eventuality. So.
Yeah, I think you're right. So Viva Van and Trish Adora have done a great job elevating themselves and putting them on the map of awareness. I don't think that they're there yet. Either one of them truly at a singles level that we want them to be. Trish Adora probably more than Viva Van, but I remember seeing both of them and thinking they are both at different stages of they're getting there, but not there yet kind of thing. So it's going to be a fun kickoff match, and I will be checking it out before the main show.
It should be interesting. Venkin mentions if Mayu leaves, can Stardom sign Sari so I can have Sari versus Shuri? Thanks. Well, I mean, I mean, right now, the Sari is working with whoever the heck she wants, and seems to be getting along just fine doing that. So I don't know if she needs to sign with anybody long term because she seems to be able to work for just about anybody right there. Yeah. Well, and USVA guy says she may go to Miracle. Don't be surprised if she sticks around, though. I mean, like I said, they can make a good deal,
right?
they can make an offer. They can make an offer for sure. And Colin says he'd have Shuri beat Mayu for it personally. Well, that's another excellent wrestler, and that could carry that load. All right. Next, we have a number one contender three-way tag team match. Back to Capital Collision. And Sam is here from Power Bombshells. Oh, Sam, glad you're here. Yes. Power Bombshells, 1 p.m. Eastern on Sundays. They had a really good preview last week just before All In that I was happy to join them for. Number one contender three-way match for the Strong Openweight Tag Team Championship. So we have a TMDK team, that being Robbie Eagles and Bad Dude Tito. We have the Hantai crew of Tomohiro Ishii and Hiroshi Tanahashi. So we got the Legends team right there. And this, Jeremy, is the one that I have been waiting for a long time. A tag team I think belongs in New Japan. I know they're going to AEW because they were part of All In. But James Drake and Zach Gibson, the grizzled young veterans, this is an excellent tag team. Their style suits New Japan, strong style wrestling very well. I am really excited to see Drake and Gibson in a New Japan ring. And this is one of the things I'm most looking forward to tomorrow night, seeing grizzled young veterans on the cerulean blue, as we've learned in the past year. They've really been hammering that cerulean blue thing, haven't they? But anyway, first match for GYV.
If it were me, I'd have him win. And if it were me, I'd have him pin Tanahashi. Just make it clean, make it efficient. That's what Tanahashi is there to do at this point, is his presence still has enough clout to get people over. And I think TMDK are the strong tag champions, so it'd be kind of interesting if Robbie Eagles and Bad Dude Tito got to wrestle them. But yeah. I don't know. I feel like TMDK is being positioned as a very unified faction right now, and that kind of direction seems to be counterintuitive to what we'd want to see. Having Ishii and Tanahashi, frankly, is just like the signature. Hey, we got an opener match. We got your favorite guys. Yeah. These are the signatures. Welcome to New Japan. I like it. Let's have fun. But I do think that it is the Drake and Gibson era in New Japan for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and I think that, Sam says it right here. She says TMDK versus Grizzled Young Veterans would be awesome. Yes, absolutely. And the Grizzled Young Veterans were one of the best teams in NXT UK, which was an excellent show. Still one of the best things WWE was doing during that period. NXT UK was excellent. They got stuck in the Gacy angle that didn't really work for anybody, unfortunately, when they were under the thumb of Shawn Michaels. But now that they're rid of him, the dime store cowboy Shawn, yeah, maybe they can blossom a little bit more in AEW and New Japan and not have to put in stupid contact lenses and act like I don't know what they were trying to do with that, trying to make it a cult or whatever the hell that was, whatever it is they had on that.
Steven, I feel like I'm sensing some kind of like schism with how you think Grizzled Young Vets should be booked. Some type of I think schism would be exactly the next phrase that I would use to describe how you feel about it.
It would be. I'm happy that they're in a place maybe where they'll be a little bit more taken care of. But it does. The TMDK thing is an interesting matchup too. Tito and Eagles, but it does feel like the place to go is Grizzled Young Veterans versus TMDK, which would be a fantastic match if it happens.
I am going to lightly burn your brain by introducing this possibility in a different timeline. If things had gone just a little bit differently, James Drake and Zach Gibson might be a part of the new Wyatt clan.
No, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like,
I think going that way, it could have been that way.
The thing that bothered me most about Schism here, real quick, and yes, I did forget what it was called, Schism, but Gacy. I mean, Gacy's not the greatest wrestler on earth, but he's not bad. He's not a bad wrestler either. And it's just that, man, he got saddled with bad gimmick after bad gimmick after bad gimmick. And I'm not convinced this Wyatt thing's any better for him. But it's just the guy can't seem to get anywhere when it comes to that. It seems like all the creative for him has been rotten since he got to WWE.
I will say, in addition to Gacy finding a bit of rejuvenation, I did watch the Dynamite, and they did a backstage segment from All In where Drake and Gibson just lit up the Bucks and put the tag team division on notice. And had they left it at there, great. But then they followed up with like a live backstage segment, and it kind of regressed them a little bit. Like you got your point across just big time right here. I think they're going to get put over FTR immediately and then put in a prominent spot in the tag team division, and rightfully so. They do deserve their flowers, and they are a fresh shot in the arm for the entire worldwide tag team landscape.
Yeah, and Sam mentions against the Outrunners. That's a good matchup. It's nice to have these fresh matches because Sam and Mel had a really good talk on their show about how the tag team division feels very tired right now, and just de-emphasized all across wrestling for the most part, tag team wrestling, which I love. I first started watching wrestling in 1983, which I know was a hell of a long time ago, but it was kind of a golden age of tag teams were either happening or about to have the fabulous ones in Memphis. And then you started seeing teams like the Rock and Roll Express, the Midnight Express, the British Bulldogs, the Hart Foundation, the Russians and all this stuff, the Road Warriors. And so I kind of fell in love with tag team wrestling very early in my fandom. And I know that Vince didn't care for it. So it was de-emphasized a lot when Vince was running things. And now it just kind of feels like it's taken a back seat again. Teams like Drake and Gibson can absolutely carry a show. I mean, they'll have the best match on a show over and over again. And they're very much capable of doing so. And so's TMDK. So, let's put them in there together.
Yeah, I remember somebody reminded me that they had a match on Collision back in April against the Acclaimed that, they had a good match with the Acclaimed was basically the takeaway. So they've been on AEW 4. There's nothing about them that is half-assed. They remind me of FTR when FTR had their great campaign within their first year or two of AEW. If you just let Grizzled Young Vets go and an opportunity in a big match setting, the reaction they got at All In where it was quiet will not be the case going forward.
All right. Well, what's next then? Match after that is a preview of the Global heavyweight match that's coming up in Japan. I believe at Destruction in Kobe. It's going to be Yoshihashi, the challenger to David Finlay, teaming up with Kevin Knight and Rocky Romero against Finlay, Drilla Maloney, and Clark Connors. So again, this is mostly a preview match for that global championship title match. But on the other hand, there's a lot of talent in this one. God knows Kevin Knight's fantastic. Rocky's still excellent. You have Maloney and Connors. I think this will be a really good match. There's going to be some storyline to it when it comes to Finlay and Yoshihashi, but it should be pretty good. And it seems like Rocky's in real jeopardy here, Jeremy, doesn't it?
I don't know, man. I kind of think that for the Yoshihashi program, you kind of just have him keep winning. Like, you just kind of have him getting the pin on everybody. It's just like, you can't fucking stop this guy going into like the Finlay match where it's just like, he's got their number. Like,
he could be, to be fair, he could beat Maloney or Connors or something like that. And if they really want to emphasize that Yoshihashi is a threat, they could have him get that crucifix bomb on Finlay again and get that win and just have Finlay throw a fit at ringside. So nothing's in the books. The good news is Connors, Maloney, Romero, Knight. I mean, aside from the global title match, we've got terrific action in this match. This should really be good.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a great match, and it's perfectly set up for Yoshihashi to get the pin. You look at this and you think that Rocky or Kevin Knight is going to eat the pin, and I think it's going to be fun, and I think that everybody in that arena is going to be expecting Finlay to just pin and move on. But how much fun would it be if Yoshihashi just got his number again?
No, it could happen. Could very well happen right there. So they're definitely trying to make him look like a threat. After this, we have another long-term storyline being told here. Fred Rosser and Tom Lawler teaming up against Jarrell Nelson and Royce Isaacs' West Coast Wrecking Crew. Of course, former members of Team Filthy. They did not like that Rosser and Lawler built up mutual respect. So when Rosser and Lawler shook hands, didn't sit well with West Coast Wrecking Crew. The rift was in motion. A rift between those those guys were put in motion, and of course, later on they all turned on each other, and so we're getting this here. But it's one of those things where New Japan Strong, NJPW Strong, has so few cards. There's only like one every other month or so. But this feels like it's been like a 3-year storyline going with Rosser, Lawler as rivals, now as a team against West Coast Wrecking Crew. But it's been a long-term thing. But here we're going to get Rosser and Lawler against Isaacs and Nelson.
This feud has gone on as long as Lawler has had the Strong title. As far back as him first winning the title, because Rosser was knocking on the door from the get-go, and he didn't get it. He didn't get his opportunity, and then he lost, and then he had another opportunity, and then he won, and then everything went out. This has been the New Japan of America lore more than anything else. This thing between the West Coast Wrecking Crew and Fred Rosser, you got to give them their flowers, man. They have not quit on this thing for years. They have just kept it going.
And Dunstan here says that West Coast Wrecking Crew are a team that should have been in Japan years ago. Yes, I mean, on this very show last year, we were trying to advocate for them to be in World Tag League. I still think they should be this year. There aren't a pile of teams in New Japan Pro Wrestling, so let's bring these guys in, that type of thing. If Grizzled Young Veterans are involved in the AEW tag team storylines, then it's unlikely that they'll be gone for a month at a time. But I don't know why you don't bring West Coast Wrecking Crew in for a month to fill out the World Tag League. They could have excellent matches, and they're part of the story anyway.
That kind of reminded me of something. Over the last week, I was talking with some other people in one of the other wrestling discords, and it got brought up that Kikuchi has a lot to do with the long-term creative and character beats for these wrestlers, and that changed in March.
Mm-hmm.
And wasn't the case before. Do you remember who Kikuchi is?
A little bit, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He was the guy that got demoted over the Ibushi stuff.
Yeah.
And he had to take a backseat for a while. Well, he is not taking a back seat, and it became around March. It was explained to me that he got the book. And so the Yoda Tsuji stuff and the G1 stuff and the emphasis on the new guys and recognition on the lore, I would not completely rule out guys like West Coast Wrecking Crew coming back around and having a bit of opportunity. He is recognizing some of these wrestlers like Zack Sabre Jr., who've been dedicated to New Japan, who have been there and like gritted and grinded, and they've stepped away from guys like Nemeth and Riddle, which happened around the same time, by the way. They just kind of like, no, this is not the direction that we're going. So is it impossible? No, not at all. Is it more likely than before? Actually, yes. So it's going to be interesting. Like, I'm not saying the World Tag League or anything like that, but an integration of these guys more in Japan in the near future is entirely possible.
We got the Gates of Agony in Tag League last year, and they were good. They did fine. But I think West Coast Wrecking Crew would even be a better fit. And Venkin mentions that he saw Alex Zane was injured recently, so maybe Monster Sauce might not be able to enter Tag League. Hopefully it's not that serious, and Alex will be back very soon. I'm a big fan of Alex Zane. I would like to see him back. But like I said, not a ton of tag teams in New Japan or, in a lot of companies. So would like to see the good ones, and West Coast Wrecking Crew is certainly one of those. So Rosser and Lawler, Nelson and Isaacs as part of the show tomorrow.
I'm looking forward to the match. So speaking of spending time in Japan, like I hope the West Coast Wrecking Crew is, we actually have our guest here with us. This is Larry Sternshein. Let's get you on here, Larry. There we go. Hello, Larry.
Hello. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
You guys can hear me okay, right?
A little bit louder on the mic. We just missed you on that one. There we go.
Maybe this is better. But no one can see my pretty face.
There we go. I got you. There we go. We got the beauty. So we were in the middle of the Capital Collision preview, and we're gonna jump back into that in a little bit. But we brought you on the show here today because you had an opportunity to go to Japan and go to the G1 Semifinals and the finals. And we wanted to bring you on here today because, frankly, that's an experience that we want to hear some more about.
Sure. That's
so, real quick before we do that, you have a podcast.
I do.
And you are a member of the Fight Game Media family, and you decided to come on here. But would you mind telling us about your podcast and what you podcast about?
Yeah, so I have a show called Real Early, real like in film reel. I have a sign, but I can't light it up because then it'll just flicker.
I got you on the screen.
But basically, I talk about movies with guests about how they got into movies. So it's either going to be fans of movies, other podcast hosts, people in the industry, and we just kind of have a conversation about, their life growing up, like who got them into movies, some of their favorite films growing up, plugging whatever they got going on. And it's just a fun little conversation that people seem to enjoy, just because it's different than just talking about a specific movie, so I never know where the conversation is going to take me a lot of times. So that's been a lot of fun. I've had a lot of different guests on from all walks of life, all around the world. So it's pretty exciting.
Awesome. I think I've heard a few of them. I know you had Paul Fontaine on from the network back in December and a couple other things. How often does the episode show come out?
I try to do 2 a month. It doesn't always work out that way with real life and whatnot, but there's 40 episodes up there right now that you guys can go and enjoy, and then hopefully a lot more to come.
I mean, it's a little hard to do 2 episodes in a month when you spend a significant amount of time in Japan watching pro wrestling instead of checking that. So why don't we get to that real quick? Check out some of the stuff that you sent us earlier on this thing.
So for the folks listening to this as a podcast, we have some of Larry's photos here. One of them is the G1 trophy and the flag that has the ribbons. Each ribbon, I guess, is the name of a past winner, and it's sitting right there. That was right in Sumo Hall, correct, Larry?
Yeah, it was when you first walk in, right by the stairs, they have the table set up with the G1 Climax poster with all the people in it. And everyone's just there taking pictures of the thing because it's like literally someone's going to win this by the end of the weekend. So that was really fun. And the flags on the other picture are on the outside, and it's everybody's banner that's in the G1. So there was like a Takeshita one and a Hanari one, and everybody that was in it. And they're really colorful and neat to look at.
These are all things that relate back to sumo, and of course, this was in Ryogoku Kujikan there. And I've been lucky enough to go there for Grand Sumo, and one of the things that right where that G1 trophy is, the Emperor's Cup usually sits, which is the trophy given to the winner of the tournament. So they really tie all that in, and there are flags outside for the various sumo wrestlers as well. So they're both keeping an eye on that tradition. Also, it's a good way to give it that look of legitimacy, of something that sumo does and something that New Japan does there. So tell us about, was this your first trip to Japan, to Sumo Hall, any of this, or is this something you've done on the regular?
No, this is my first ever trip to Japan. So then my first trip to Sumo Hall. Ever since the first time I saw Jushin Liger back in the early 90s, I was fascinated with Japan wrestling. And then they had those Japan Super shows. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to get that one just because there was supposed to be a Steiner's match against Road Warrior, Hawk, and Power Warrior, I think. But they had left. But I still got the show. And the first match was Liger and Ultimo Dragon in a New Japan ring. And it just wowed me. Just the atmosphere, the way the ring sounded different, the announcing was a little bit more sports-based, even though I think it was like Bischoff and JR doing it and stuff. So ever since then, I've just loved New Japan and Japanese wrestling, and I went online and met people who also liked it. So it was just one of those things where I always wanted to go, and the older I got, the bigger the itch became, and eventually, this was the year that me and a few other friends decided that we were going to go and visit Japan and get to go to a couple of these G1 shows. The original plan in my head was we're going to go to a lot of G1 shows, but it didn't quite work out that way. But these final 2 nights were pretty amazing just to experience.
Yeah. Well, what was it like? What was it like walking into Sumo Hall for the semifinals? You're going into the building for the first time. What's the buzz in the crowd like? What was just the overall atmosphere in the building? Maybe even like before the show started. Like, was there an air of heavy anticipation? What were your thoughts?
The interesting thing was me and two of my other friends, Phil and his wife Jen. We had went in early-ish, and this woman with a camera comes up and says, "Hey, do you want to be interviewed?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure, why not? Like, whatever." So the lady asked us questions about like who you're rooting for in the G1, who your favorite New Japan wrestlers are, and then at the end we did the G1 mantra, which I can't remember how it goes right now, but all 3 of us had to say it together and punch at the screen. And we're like, I don't know what this is for, but this was pretty fun. Like, I mean, we're not going to say no, right?
Sure.
Turns out we're part of the montage at the beginning of the final G1 show, when they do the opening package. So we're on New Japan World in the little, like we're in the top left corner. You can see us, all 3 of us.
Very cool.
All the other people they've done interviews with. So I got that going for me.
So I had a question for you. You reached out to me, and I kind of pointed you in the direction of Lawson Tickets to figure out like your G1 like attending. When did you decide that you wanted to go to Japan? And what was the time frame of like making this all happen? Did you decide in like March? Did you decide in like June? And then from the time you decided to making it all happen, how tough was it? Did it feel like it came together easier? Would you do it again? What would you recommend to people? That kind of thing.
Yeah. We decided we wanted to do it last year. Me and my friends. I have a friend group from Chicago that I still keep in touch with, even though I moved. And we're trying to get as many people as we could to go to Japan. Some of them had already been, but some of us haven't. And so it was easy to have somebody who's had that experience already kind of know what to do. Mm-hmm. And so my friend Phil, he was the one that got the tickets, and he used sumo tickets.com, I think it is.
Yeah.
And he said the experience he had with them was amazing. Like they got back to him real quickly, made sure that we got the right tickets that we needed. They even sent the tickets to the hotel. So they were there at his hotel waiting for him. And they're physical tickets, which was really cool. So I would highly recommend using those gentlemen for that. Yeah, so it was real easy, especially if I'm not the one doing it. It's super easy.
Thanks, bud.
I would highly recommend if you go to that site, especially because you can get tickets for like that and Stardom and Noah and some other stuff. And I guess the communication is real simple. So it is someone who speaks English and everything. So shouldn't be intimidated by going to Japan and getting the tickets, because there are people there that know the market for this kind of stuff, and they are prepared, and they've done it a lot. So, and there's probably some other places too that you mentioned, and I'm sure they're all great because, they rely on people coming in from out of the country, and if they have poor customer service, then people will just use somebody else. So, my guess is just as easy.
Yeah, I'm looking at the website here right now, buysumotickets.com. And like Jeremy mentioned, Lawson Station, which is one of the convenience store chains in Japan, they're everywhere. They have kiosks that you can look at in English, and you can hit a button to get English, and you can buy tickets through there. But it is a buying service, and they mentioned this on their website: New Japan Pro Wrestling, DDT, Stardom, Marigold, Big Japan, All Japan, Noah, Freedoms, Dragon Gate, TJPW, Sendai Girls, Ice Ribbon, 01, basically everybody. And they did mention that Ryzen changed to an all e-ticket model. We can't help you with that anymore. Sorry. So, well, there you go. So, but so that's one where you can go to there. You mentioned the Lawson Station one. So there are ways to do this. And thankfully, like you mentioned, Larry, English-speaking English translations are available. So I encourage people, don't be intimidated by the language barrier. They will help you out a lot better than, say, Stardom World does.
Yeah. It's really like you can go there now and just see in English whatever show you want to get to, and work with them. And like I said, their communication apparently is quite spot on. Our friends were really impressed with how easy it was to get everything taken care of.
So once you got in your
there?
Oh, sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead, Jeremy. Sorry.
It ended up being like 8 days. I want to go back like right away.
Was there anything not New Japan related that you just were head over heels for an experience or anything like that before we dive into the New Japan?
Yeah. Well, for one, I just really love just the experience of going to Japan, because it's not so much a culture shock. It's just a shock of how clean everything is. That was like the first thing I noticed. And, there's you could go to any bathroom and it's most likely going to be very clean. And so that's really kind of fun. And then just like you can be in all these buildings with all these advertisements, and then just walk like 5 minutes later and you're like in a really beautiful park, and I got to go pretty much just in Tokyo. So, hopefully if I go back, I get to experience more of Japan, but there's just so much there. There's Odaiba is a man-made island, which is basically just like an island of malls, but there's like all sorts of really cool stuff there. The other great thing there that I highly recommend is this place called Todokan.
Yes.
It's a wrestling memorabilia store where you can actually buy this stuff. And it is, I could have spent all day there, because they've got T-shirts signed by wrestlers, robes. There's a Great O'Khan robe you can buy that he wore.
Sure.
There's like the IWGP title belt is in there. You can't buy it, but you can look at it. And just like DVDs and old programs, posters. You can buy the stuff online too. I don't know the actual name of the website, but if you search Todokan Pro Wrestling Show, it'll show up. And that was probably the coolest wrestling adjacent thing I did, just because just the history of that place is phenomenal. And I can't recommend Japan enough. There's so much to do that you can literally, you'll never be bored.
No, definitely not. And you mentioned the Tudo-Okan, boy, that place is pretty phenomenal, and it's difficult to explain the size of it. I mean, it is a large store. The New Japan Tokan shop, which is very near Korakuen Hall, is a fairly small place. It's neat. It's got all the cool merch that you see on the website and things. Tudo-Okan, it's enormous. I think it's like 2 floors, and it's fantastic. I spent hours there, and will do so again when I go. So I do really recommend that one too. It's a great spot.
All right, so we have a couple of photos here that we're gonna jump to real quick. When was this one taken of Hiroki Goto? Were these photos from the finals or the semifinals?
These are mostly semifinals, except for one that's from the finals. Apparently, it's halfway through my trip, my phone decided to start taking everything in this HEIC file format. So that's hard to do things with. So I didn't have a chance to really convert a whole lot. So these are
great
night ones. Yeah, I was far away up on the second floor. So this is about as zoomed in as you can get, but I'm not unhappy with any of the photos I got. They're pretty cool. Like, especially where we were the first 2 nights we're on this side of the corner, and then the other night we're on the other side. So you really got a chance to get people on the corner, put their hands up, and that was really kind of fun to be able to get those photos,
So for the podcast folks, we saw Hiroki Goto, Hiroshi Tanahashi, Jeff Cobb, all kind of posing in the ring there, and some others. And you got the face-off between Tsuji and Zack Sabre Jr. after the semifinals were over, when those two realized they were going to be facing each other in the finals there. So really kind of a bird's eye view. And because this is a building, Larry, you find the sight lines at Sumo Hall are pretty good. I mean, because everything is sort of aimed down at the ring, and then for sumo, of course, that the clay, the clay pit that they have, it's not really a pit, it's a platform. But anyway, the sight lines on it are almost designed for they're literally designed for sumo wrestling. Pro wrestling fits right in there. So no matter where you sit in the building, you're facing the middle of the ring. It's not like a basketball arena where sometimes you're looking over to your left and right. You're just staring right down into the thing. And so, how did you feel like the atmosphere in Sumo Hall? Was it a loud crowd? Was it an excited crowd? Japanese crowds at some of these buildings can be fairly quiet, but this was a huge event and an important one. What was the reactions? What were the reactions like of the people there live?
Yeah. Well, first, let me just go back real quick. When I first got into the building, when you first walk in, that's where they have like the merchandise. And also they had wrestlers before the show and after the show. You can actually go and get autographs from them.
Oh, cool.
So like I'm leaving, I see like Hanare, he was there signing autographs. And because of that sort of atmosphere, like there was a buzz. You could definitely feel everybody there was really excited. I saw a grown man dressed like Tetsuya Naito, like full getup, like it was Halloween. It was really fun.
Wow.
So I had to get merch because I'm there. So the shirt I'm wearing, can't really see, but it's the classic.
Yeah, it's the lion mark.
The lion mark.
Baseball jersey lion mark.
And I've been wanting the shirt forever. Like always wanted a shirt. So that was the first thing I went to. And the line is like, because it's Japan, everybody's really nice, and you knew exactly where to go, so there was no like questions, and the line moved really quickly. And there was a gentleman working, I wish I would have gotten his name, but he's definitely a guy from the UK that works for New Japan, was in the line. He saw me and he immediately just said, hey, here's the situation with the merch. There's the different shirts, the shirt sizes, and I asked him, hey, what shirt size are you wearing? Because they run a little bit small in Japan. Yes, so he was like, oh, I'm wearing an XL. I'm like, maybe it might not fit me. Maybe it will. I don't know. So I went double XL, and this one fits really well. I probably could have gone away with an extra large, but I wanted to be sure. So I'd rather have a bigger shirt than a too small shirt. And it fits amazing. And it's weird. What's cool about these? Oh, Thomas, apparently. Awesome. Yeah, Thomas, he was so nice. Like
USVA guys help us.
He's the guy. He knows he knows people and who know people. He knows who you're talking about.
Yeah, that was really awesome. Just because I really felt like real like they. I mean, I'm sure he's seen people who speak English there all the time. So that I thought that was really neat. So I bought the shirt. I bought a plush of Antonio Inoki, which I left in Japan.
No,
I know. It's a little guy. I might have to.
All right.
We got to go back and get another one now.
I know. Yeah, it was. I feel so silly, but I got that, and I also got the program, which is right here.
All right. Oh, so
I like that graphic for that program with the 20 guys in the grid.
Yeah,
that was a really good graphic design.
There's just so much. Like I can't read half of it, but luckily nowadays with Google Translate, I can see what they're saying, but it's got everybody in the G1 articles, and then there's spots of all the wrestlers are listed in New Japan at the time. May not be as accurate now as it was a few weeks ago, but it's pretty cool. I always get a program when you go to a show just because it's a lasting memory.
I got a question for you, and it is about the matches on the semis, the G1 semifinals. These were some of the matches that were on there that were on the undercard. You had Yoshihashi and Shomikado versus Mikey Nichols and Robbie Eagles. You had Shota Umino, ELP, and Jado versus Takeshita, Jeff Cobb, and Caleb Newman. You had Evil's crew versus Tanahashi's crew. When you are there and you are aware of New Japan, I mean, if you were at the G1 semifinals, there's a 95% chance you speak the universal language of pro wrestling and you know mainly what's going on. But there is a language barrier. How easy is it to follow along when you are there and you don't have any context for anything that's happening in the ring and you're trying to figure out as you go?
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy because they basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like they do two announcements for the wrestlers. So they'll say, these are people coming out, and you're like, okay, so I know these are the teams, and they're pretty clear of who you can hear really clearly in that building. So if they're saying Naito, you hear Naito and Hanare. And the announcer is like, he's great. He's real loud. You can hear him clear. And then when they do the second introduction, then everybody gets to go to the middle of the ring. So you like it's whoever it's going to be, and then they're there. So it's really easy to kind of get an idea of who's who. And the crowd is amazing too, because like if you didn't know House of Torture was, you would know that people do not like House of Torture because they were just like booing and like they were great in that regard. So they always talk about how like there's, I don't know, for the longest time I always felt like people say, oh, there are no heels and faces in Japan, and that's just obviously incorrect. Especially with them. But apparently though, my friends saw these two older ladies who loved House of Torture, which I thought was hilarious.
That sounds good.
I just want to see it all burn.
Yeah, it's really cool to do that. Now, what does help is if you have New Japan World, you can actually use that as a guide to be like, okay, what are the matches? Who's or even if you just go on Twitter, they have their the listing of who's going to be on the matches and their website and whatnot. So you're kind of into it and know what's going on.
Can you play World while the match is going for like an audio commentary?
You probably could, yeah.
I don't know if I'd want to because you'd be behind like 5 seconds or like 10 seconds.
Right.
But it's not impossible if you wanted to do that.
I had one of those little Wi-Fi gadgets when I was in Japan that I just kept in my bag, and I had Wi-Fi with me like all the time, which was really helpful. And so allowed me to like especially check like what matches were coming up, because I mean there were some people I weren't familiar with, like some of the Young Lions, for example. But yeah, the other thing I want to mention too about the crowd is, first off, Sumo Hall is cool because that second balcony where they have actual seats are amazing seats. They're wider than what you get here in America. They're very comfortable, so I was never feeling squished. And we knew we had to sit in seats because there was no way we're sitting Indian style or on our butts for that whole show. Because on that first floor, it's just boxes. We just kind of sit on your butt.
Yeah, you sit on the floor.
We're old men. We can't do that anymore.
Nope.
But you can see everything. And we were really lucky, too, because we got to see when Umino and Tanahashi are doing their crowd entrances. Like, we had a great view of them going down, like, all there, and everyone's going crazy for everybody. And ELP, I don't know what he's doing, but he's just, like, jumping on every box and stuff. It was really fun to just kind of watch. The second night, somebody got a high five from Umino and freaked out. They were so excited they got the high five from him, and I was like, I love their fans. And I have to say, you really need to go and experience a Japanese wrestling crowd because it's so different than America. And they're perfect for me because I like to sit there and watch the show and cheer and yell out the wrestlers' names and say, like, go Umino or whatever. And everyone else likes to do that too. And there's always pockets of crowds being like, saying the wrestlers' names and cheering them on. And, so there's that really cool feeling of nobody's trying to get themselves over. There's nobody standing up ever, so you can see everything, but they're all energetic. It's my perfect crowd. I love New Japan crowds.
So as you sat there and you were watching these shows, was there anyone who got you feel like got the best reactions from the crowd? Was there anyone that surprised you with the reaction they got, either positively or negatively? Is there anyone who maybe got less of a reaction than you thought would? Just kind of give us an idea there of being in the building. Were there any reactions that surprised you?
I wouldn't say there was anything that was noticeably surprising, but what I will say, when Takahashi came out to do commentary during the Yoda match, he got a really nice ovation, and I was like, oh, I took it back. I was like, yeah, the crowd definitely knows who he is now. And I was like, there were people who were talking about how a lot of those crowds may not be too familiar with him, and I think that there's something there. But near the end of that G1, I think people started to recognize, like, wow, this guy is awesome, and I hope they keep bringing him back and he works there a lot more because the people definitely saw a future main eventer in him. So that was really cool just to kind of see that live, because I don't know if you really kind of get that so much being in the States if you're not watching too much of the G1 or see him floundering in AEW, quite frankly. So that was awesome. And then the other thing was the guys that you think are going to be over were over. So that was cool. Nobody was like a baby face. Everybody just was like, oh, I don't like this baby face, and I'm going to cheer the heel instead. There's really kind of none of that, which I really appreciated too. The other one I was shocked he was as over as he was, just because I'm not that familiar. I kind of a lapsed fan in many ways, is Zack Sabre Jr. They love him over there.
Oh yeah.
And that was awesome to see how excited they were when he won on night 2. And like they were just thrilled. It was really cool.
So there's a thing that you can do.
Oh, sorry.
No, there's a thing you can do with Zack Sabre Jr. Sorry. Let me get the count real quick. There's a thing that you can do with Zack Sabre Jr. if you want to catch up on his catalog. Is that New Japan on YouTube put all of the TV title matches that he ever did up on YouTube for free, because that was the gimmick of the TV title when he had it. So if you want to just get caught up on the run that he had, you do not need a New Japan World subscription. You can just go to the YouTube channel, watch all the TV title matches, and get caught up on the magic that is Zack Sabre Jr.
I wanted to ask you this. There's been a lot of talk about whether or not Shota Umino is clicking with the live crowd or with New Japan fans at all. And there seems to be some disconnect between Japanese fans and American fans in New Japan as to what they like, what they don't like. So when Shota Umino came out those 2 nights, he was on both shows. What did you feel was the reaction? Was it a mostly positive reaction, or did you sense something otherwise? Or is he, in fact, over as a babyface in Japan?
Yeah, I have to say, my experience, like he seemed really over as a babyface to me.
Mhm.
Like when he came in to do like the save on night one, like the crowd was excited about it because he came to help them. And then night two, when he's coming out with Tanahashi and he's going all over the place, like the crowd was like really into him. Like, you know, I don't know. I can't speak to what people are seeing here because, like I said, like Umino is still pretty new to me too.
Mhm.
But like you could I really think he's going to be one of their top stars. It might have been a little bit of a slow going for him, maybe, but I definitely think that there's gonna be a time where he's like one of their main guys. It almost felt like early Steve Austin in the sense that he started to get over a little bit with the crowd, but it wasn't like Steve Austin. And I'm not saying he's gonna be the next Stone Cold or the next Naito, but he's definitely gonna be someone I can totally see him being one of the main guys in the future.
Let me ask you this. We're all on the same page that he is going to be one of their cornerstones moving forward. Do you think, from what you saw of him and the audience reaction and his reaction to the audience, do you think he could be the guy?
I think I have a feeling he's going to be similar to something like Naito, where he's really popular. And then remember, there was that period where people just kind of turned on him a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I think there's going to be sort of that period where he really finds his main character, because some of this does feel a little bit kind of forced with just like the hair and the gear, but he's like Shota, like, and being with Moxley and stuff. So there's like a little disconnect. So I think there's going to be like a bell curve for him a little bit. Okay. But I definitely think he's connecting with the crowd, and I think there'll be something that clicks. And I think it just really depends on how they book him too. Like he's going to have to get some big wins over some popular people too, I'm imagining, to go. I mean, he might have done a bunch of stuff that I missed, but like I thought he was going to go farther in the G1, and obviously he didn't quite do it because I think he was hurt a little bit.
That was a talking point for a lot of people.
I honestly definitely see a situation where he wins the G1 at least one time. Maybe more, and that's not nothing.
No, absolutely. And you talked about how the crowd was really into Zach, and of course he ended up winning the tournament. He beat Yota Tsuji in the finals. Can you talk to us a little bit about Yota Tsuji and what his reaction was like? Because that's another guy that a lot of people feel may be the next big thing in New Japan. Did you get the sense that the crowd was ready for that?
They like him. My friend pointed out that he's definitely not ready yet. Excuse me. But the crowd definitely was behind him, and there was a lot of near falls and close things that they wanted him to do. So I think they're behind him, but there's something kind of missing still, and I think it's just because he doesn't quite have. I don't think he has quite his own identity yet. It's still sort of like the new guy in Los Ingobernables. Mm-hmm. And it'll be interesting to see like what he does at the Dome, for example. I think that'll be a big tell of where the crowd sees him and where New Japan sees him at. Because I have no idea what they're going to do. Because it's not like they're going to do him in Naito or something like that. Well, I mean, they could, but I don't think they are.
I mean, it could be another LIJ guy that Naito faces at Wrestle Kingdom, but I don't think it's Yota Tsuji. I think you're right.
I will say Takahashi, Hiromu, he was really over with the crowd, and they were real excited when he beat Hiner.
Yeah.
That was the best part. That was a very big deal. Did you catch the implication of why that was a big deal?
Not until after I was kind of told about it, because I'm still, trying to figure out a lot of this stuff. So I knew I'm not that familiar, but I knew Hanari was the never openweight champion, right?
Yes.
And he got pinned. Yeah. And if you get pinned, then you have a good chance for being a challenger. And then finding out that he wants to wrestle Naito, and the only way to kind of do that, in his mind, is to win that never openweight title.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now I'm really excited for that match because I want him to do it because I think that's a really cool story. And yeah, so at the time though, it was just he beat the guy who was the champion, and the whole thing was hilarious because he had him in like a 10 count, and then Hanari's like, it was a 3. I'm like, yeah, it was like a 10, dude. It was really funny.
That was quietly one of the most consequential moments at the G1 finals, because it's been something that people have been wanting for a long time, is Hiromu moving up from the junior heavyweight division and potentially
he's not moving up. He's just visiting. He's not a heavyweight.
And potentially
he's never going to be a
heavyweight.
He'll never be a heavyweight full time.
Potentially
never
getting
will.
a crack at
he's 5'0"
some of those other wrestlers in that division. So when he beat Hanare, it opened up the opportunity of him wrestling above his weight class. And there's really only one person that people want him to wrestle above his weight class, which is Naito.
Yeah, I think it sounds really cool too because they have. He can have doing. There can be another challenger between. If he wins the belt, you can do one more challenger where it's like no one thinks he's going to win against this big dude. And he wins him, you know, just to really put him over into his match with Naito. But that's for you guys to discuss and figure out because you guys.
Well, you know, you might, if you want to stick around for the Capital Collision preview, you might be part of the conversation with us.
Were there any other people that got strong reactions that you noticed?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much a lot of the guys that you would expect. The one dude I have to point out is I don't know if it's maybe they are always behind Young Lions, but the one who was in those tag matches, I can't remember his name.
Shomakato?
I think so. He was like the one who wrestled with Yoshihashi.
Yes.
And every time he would get on a move or he would show fire, and the crowd was so behind him, and that was so fun just to see how much they love these young guys. And, you know, there's a couple of great near falls, and especially with like when they're in the Boston Crabs. And, you know, watching that a young lion live is really fascinating because you talk about the fundamentals and you can see it on TV, but when you see the fundamentals live, it's like these guys are unbelievably good. You know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine there ever being a mess up just because they're just so in control of what they need to do. Yeah. And all the guys are like that. And just like even the way they body slam, it's just so technically proficient. It was amazing watching live. It's incredible.
Yeah, those guys get a lot of drills and a lot of time in on that, and before they ever get to see the light of day in a show. So when they're out there, you really do see like the footwork and the positioning and all of that is down to a T. And it has to be, otherwise they have to do squats for the rest of the show if they mess up. But beyond that, guys like Yuji Nagata and Kojima Tenzan, the guys that really help out a lot in the dojo, those aren't the only ones, but those are some of the ones. Tiger Mask, they really drill those fundamentals hard on those guys, and it does show. They're very clean, crisp work when they're very crisp workers from the very, very beginning. It is fun to watch that development too, as they start to add more things to their move set and things. So we're starting to see a little bit of that with Kato and Murashima. They're just allowed to do a little bit more. So that progression is one of my favorite things too, to watch. And I remember seeing Shota Umino when he was just, you know, Boston Crab, body slam, drop kick. That was all he did, and that was all he was allowed to do. And now we're seeing a lot more. So that's one of the better parts too.
Yeah, the other thing for me that was awesome, where maybe if you're just watching the show, you're like, well, you know, here's the old guys. But I was there live, and to see Tenzan and Kojima and Nagata and all those guys live was really cool for me. And just like they're over with the crowd, and they don't have to do a whole lot. And there's a lot of fun little humor and stuff. And sure, some of them don't move very well, and you know, so it's not like you want them in
they
like
don't have
ones
to. It's a perfect use of their time.
But it's just it is so fun watching them. The only one that really made me sad though was oh god, why am I blanking? You know the Hanma. It's just sad.
Tomoaki Hanma, yeah.
Tomoaki Hanma. He could barely move.
Yeah,
and I know why, but it's
sad. Yeah, that broken neck and everything else where he was paralyzed for a while. It's just it took it out of him. It's interesting to see that he's such a sentimental favorite now because we almost lost the guy, and then he was almost paraplegic. So just the idea that he's in there and moving at all is a feel-good story. And so, but you're right.
It's a bittersweet sadness, put it that way. Because it was cool to see him.
Yeah. There's a point where you watch him for years after this happened, and he just comes out and he's got the same cadence, he's got the same rhythm to his movements, and it's like, you know, this guy isn't going to be in the G1, and you know that he's going to talk about wanting to be in the G1 every year. And there's almost something charming about it because you know that, like, it's in the core fabric of New Japan. And I don't know other than it's just there's a comfortable familiarity of just having Honma.
Yeah. That's well said. The other two things that I noticed I want to bring up that are unique is the first thing is I was really excited to hear the sound of the ring in New Japan Ring live, which sounds really corny, but like growing up, that sound is so different than an American ring sound. Yes. And it did not disappoint. It was really cool. It felt like gunshots. And one thing I did notice, the referees, you don't realize this, do you see them live? They hit that mat so hard because they need to make a sound. I don't know how they don't just break their hand constantly. It's unreal. They really hit that mat really hard. It was really I was impressed actually with the referees.
They have to work a lot of buildings that don't have great sound, which is part of the reason why the ring has to be loud, why the mat slaps have to be loud. They do a lot of those convention halls that are super tall buildings with no bleachers, and on the tours. Now, you were in Sumo Hall when you saw them, but if you look at those buildings where everybody is on the floor, there aren't risers, and it's in some airplane hangar like building that's like 3 stories tall, that sound will just drift away. So they have to work pretty hard to be loud in there, and I think that's just part of the fabric now. They know they got to hit the hell out of that mat just to project.
Last question for me on the G1 experience. What were the 2 or 3 matches that you're like, I am so glad that I got to see this live?
Yeah, well, the first one is Zach versus Shingo.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, man, I really hope that's the match. I was, because it's Shingo and Zach. I've never gone under like 4.5 stars on any match they've ever done. I think
I believe it.
And I was like, I've seen some 5-star matches live, and I'm like, I need another one. And as far as I'm concerned, that was a 5-star match, at least close, if not more. But it was so cool. Shingo's incredible to watch live. That dude is so charismatic, and the crowd loves him. And then also they love Zach too, and watching him do my pretzels and like that, especially at the end when he has to just like grab a hold of every limb.
Yes.
I'm just like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm going to tap out. And he did. And just, that match was awesome. And I also really loved Finley and Yoda because I got to experience a near countout, which is the most exciting thing you can see live in a New Japan show. It's unreal, especially when he gets up and falls back down. We had the perfect view of him because we're on that side. So when he fell and everyone's like cheering him on to get up, it was the coolest experience. Like you see it on TV, you're like, okay, I've seen these. But when you see him live, the crowd's into it. It was amazing. Just those little things that you've watched all your whole your life. You see him live, it's just weirdly exciting and amazing. And then also too, just like I said, finally getting to see Hiroshi Goto live, who's one of my all-time favorites in New Japan. Is fantastic. So I love those matches he was in, and I think he's just amazing. And then the finals, to experience that match was phenomenal. Great work from both guys. And just like as soon as it was over and just the confetti coming down and having Chono come out before, that was really cool.
Mr. August,
it was just like maybe if you watched the show, like the pre-matches might have been might not be the most exciting stuff, maybe, but like seeing them live, just getting to see as many wrestlers as I could do their thing was just awesome to me. So it was really fun to watch that stuff, and just even the video package they do before the show starts with clip of every winner and every G1 with the Daughtry song in the background, I think it is, and I was just like, I was just pumped and ready to go, and they got the opening of the G1 that everyone sees. Yeah, it's just, I highly recommend going to a G1 finals because it's unlike anything, especially if you're following it from the whole pool and doing a pool, which, by the way, thank you guys for helping with that. I did very well.
Good.
I actually, real quick, I did the math today to see where I was based off of, because there's a lot of ties of points,
Mm-hmm.
So I did everything, and I was tied for 34th place, I think, with like 10 other guys.
Yeah.
Out of 72 places.
Well done.
And I would have been number 72 if it weren't for you guys. So I appreciate that.
Appreciate
I didn't know a lot of this stuff, and you guys were very helpful. So I appreciate
we
that.
appreciate you. We are going to do a Capital Collision preview. We already started a little bit of it, but we're going to jump in with the Zack Sabre Jr. versus Teton match. Would you like to join us for the remainder of the preview that we're doing?
Sure. Awesome. I'll see if I can add anything that will be of use.
Well, this is the show that will be airing tomorrow night, and we'll be doing a live show, as we mentioned earlier. But, Steven, take it.
Zack Sabre Jr. against Teton. So this is the G1 winner and the challenger to Tetsuya Naito at the King of Pro Wrestling show, which will also be in Sumo Hall in October. He is facing Teton here from LIJ. It's an interesting matchup. Of course, Zach's been doing a lot of wrestling in Mexico lately. He's faced some luchadors, both in Rev Pro and in CMLL. And here he gets another one. Zach can do everything well. So we're not worried about this match. Should be an excellent one. But it feels like, to me, Jeremy, I don't think Zach is seeing the losing side of a match until he challenges Naito. So the result here may be pretty obvious, but the action should be excellent.
Zack Sabre Jr. isn't losing anytime soon. I love that Teton basically looks like Shark Boy in this image that they've decided
really does.
up on here. He looks like he's a 12-year-old. This is going to be a little bit of a styles clash that is probably going to end up being a lot of fun. I think Zack Sabre Jr. is going to continue to show why he's one of the best wrestlers in the world. Larry, what thoughts do you have?
My thought is, my favorite thing Zach does is the kind of like the roll-ups and all the little near fall stuff. And I'm looking forward to him grounding the lucha guy, and then whenever they do any sort of off the top rope move, he'll figure out a way to turn that into a pinning combination. I expect that to happen quite a bit in this match.
Yeah, we might get also a Teton dive into a submission too, which Zach also enjoys doing sometimes. Catches an arm coming down and turns it into some sort of impossible octopus hold. So
caught to a Clarky cat.
Tetsuya Naito and TJP. Jeremy, this was an issue between these two that went on the back burner for a long time, but these two almost squared off earlier in the year. So Naito and TJP finally having their singles match. Your thoughts on this one? This goes back to like the New Japan Cup and even before.
I feel like the TJP losing streak will continue on to 2025 at this rate. I think TJP is going to have a perfectly fine match with Naito. I don't really think Naito is taking off the t-shirt, if that's our metric for what we have with a Naito match. If I had to guess, I think he's just going to be saving himself for a couple of those Japan matches, while we get a little Naito break appearance in the stateside for this singles match.
Yeah, I don't expect a whole lot out of this one, to be honest. I know TJP is going to work hard, and he will probably bring it up a little bit. Naito physically ain't there. And, his knees aren't as stable as they used to be. His neck's not what it was. And so I'm not expecting any kind of classic right here. I think this will probably be a few things. He's going to might not even hit the Destino. I'm not sure you want to risk it in a match like this one. So I think we're going to be getting an appearance by Naito more than a great match from Naito.
I saw Naito live, obviously, and he's definitely taking it easy. I would say, which I don't blame him. I mean, if you're hurt and you're in multi-man matches, it's okay not to go crazy.
Mhm.
And this is I don't know what his thought process is when he goes to these shows in America, but sounds like it just depends on what you're going to get from him. But I didn't get to see TJP in Japan. He wasn't there with his crew, so I don't know what he was doing. But I don't know. I feel like this one could be a struggle. I could be wrong.
Yeah. It might be. I think TJP will probably get something out of it, and that'll be the main thing. But and then Naito and his knees, boy, and he has a hard time basing on things, so posting, etc. So we'll see what he gets, what TJP is able to get out of Naito here.
Naito's a master of self-preservation, but right now there's not as much to preserve, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just kind of being honest.
Yeah, his body's betraying him. Up next, the strong open weight tag team titles are on the line. Mikey Nichols and Shane Hayes, TMDK against Hechisero and Virus. And, again, I don't see the tag team titles really changing hands on this one, but it should be an interesting match. Hechisero and Virus are two real good wrestlers from CMLL. TMDK is an excellent team. So, maybe a little bit of a styles clash with the Lucha stuff, but these are all very capable workers. I'm looking forward to it.
I'll be honest with you. I think this match is going to over-deliver immensely.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are going to talk about how great this match was and how surprised they were. I'm not going to be surprised. I saw that CMLL Fantastic Mania show in San Jose, and I saw Hechisero and Virus live, and I was like, hot damn, these guys are great.
They're very good.
I am very much looking forward to it, and if I were a betting man, I'd say Grizzled Young Vets show up right afterwards to challenge the winners of this match when all said and done. Larry, you got any thoughts?
The first time I've ever really seen Mikey Nichols was this past weekend, or 2 weekends ago at the G1, because it was weird because they were like talking about the tag champions, but he wasn't with Shane Hayes, who was with somebody else. Robbie Eagle, who has a title. I'm like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know if it was like
it's an Australian promotional title.
Oh,
like he is the champion of an Australian promotion. At PWA, I believe.
But Mikey is weird because sometimes it feels like he wants to get himself over at the expense of other people. I could be wrong on that one, but it was just weird. It was a weird sense that I was like, it doesn't feel like he cooperates fully all the time. But then he will fully be awesome. It's just weird. He's a weird guy. I don't know. I couldn't make heads or tails of Mikey Nichols.
All right.
That's just my opinion. But Hechisero's cool. So.
Yeah, Hechisero is really good. And here's one. Now, this is a rematch from the Windy City Riot. Mustafa Ali against Hiromu Takahashi in a special singles match. Now, Ali won the last one, and that was part of his undefeated streak on the Indies where he was winning all the time. That has come to an end. He's taken some losses since then. So my sense is perhaps Hiromu getting his win back here, unless they plan to take this to another show later on. So either way, these two were good together in Chicago. I think they'll be good together tomorrow night. Hiromu and Mustafa are both real talented guys. So another match that should be entertaining to watch.
I'm kind of expecting a better match than Chicago because I felt like the Chicago match was more or less handcuffed by the idea that Mustafa Ali had a gimmick that kind of said he's not losing and all this. I fully expect Hiromu to win because he's got the never open weight direction. And frankly speaking, I think he's going to be in a main event program with Naito at Wrestle Kingdom. So at this point, full steam ahead with Hiromu Takahashi in terms of his booking plans. I think he's going to be looking really good tonight.
I actually have, being from Chicago, I've been a part of the Chicago indie scene for 20 years, and I've seen Mustafa before, he became a big star. And he was always pretty good, but to see where he's become, and now he's wrestling in Japan and WWE and stuff, it is awesome to see because that guy definitely deserves it because he is a very nice person and he's worked real hard to get where he's at. So, this match is going to probably be really good.
Yeah, he's the epitome of betting on himself, right?
Yeah.
What was that? Yeah.
He's the
epitome of betting on himself. Yeah. He's, He isn't. He is protected for the most part. Ali is within TNA. I mean, his loss has been to Mike Bailey and Nick Nemeth, which doesn't hurt you much. But Hiromu's challenging Hinare for the never openweight title. I do feel like if I had to put money down, it's Hiromu for this one.
All right.
Leo Rush and Gabe Kidd. Yeah, this is the strong openweight title match. Gabe Kidd against Leo Rush, who's a local guy. He's a Washington, D.C. Native. And Kidd, the current never openweight championship. So this one should be interesting. I mean, Leo has a very different style than Gabe usually works. Gabe, the brawler and the basher, against Leo, who is much, much smaller than Kidd and much, much faster, does that junior heavyweight style, the high-speed style. So I'm curious to see what happens in this one and how these two work together. I think that I don't see the title change at all. I think going to go with Kidd on this. I could be wrong, but I feel like they're going with Kidd. With that in mind, what are we going to get when these two very different people meet up in the ring? I'm curious to see it anyway.
I'm super curious as well. I think the optics of this match, where Leo Rush is from the DMV, this match is set in the DMV, and which is Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, and you have Gabe Kidd coming in there and destroying a local guy who's of some repute already. I think it's just laying down the groundwork of continual dominance by Gabe Kidd. I don't see a title change. I think it's possible. They could move on from Leo Rush, but I think Gabe Kidd, after beating Eddie Kingston, has a lot of mileage left in this title run.
All right.
I have to say, by the way, because of the G1, it was my first time seeing a lot of Gabe Kidd. I love that dude. He's awesome. And he needs to stop telling people he's a man, because that's like the fakest thing you could possibly do. Just be a man. Don't tell us you're a man.
Well, the problem with him being a madman is he legitimately hurts people.
yeah.
Just hit the chops hard and don't throw things at people.
Yeah, Gabe's a work in progress, no doubt about it. Gabe's a work in progress in a lot of ways. So moving on to the next one, we have the Strong Women's Championship. I'm really looking forward to this one. We have Mercedes Mone, the champion, against Momo Watanabe, who is one of the best Joshi heels on earth. She is just a fantastic bad guy, and I'm sure she's going to play that part again. She's part of that hate faction, which evolved out of Oedo Tai. So just classic villain against Mercedes Mone. And Momo is a great wrestler. She hasn't held the titles in Stardom for some reason. Both the Rossi Ogawa administration and the current one don't quite see her at that level, but she absolutely wrestles at that level. And I think this is a great challenger for Mone, someone who can get a lot out of her, and the personalities will work. I think this one's going to be really, really good, Jeremy.
I hope so. You know more about Watanabe than I do.
Yeah.
But I do believe that the talent in this ring is good enough that we are going to get a fantastic main event. It is not one that I think is, like I said earlier, going to penetrate the social, like the media awareness of pro wrestling. Like, people are not going out of their way for Momo Watanabe versus Mercedes Mone because the name factor of Momo isn't quite there. But I have no doubt that the in-ring work is going to be such that people are like, oh yeah, you should definitely check this match out later on.
Yeah, I think that's true. Any thoughts on this one, Larry?
No, not really.
That's fine.
I mean, it's just it's a title defense set meant to like bolster the Mercedes Mone run.
Yeah. I will say that I'm always skeptical of Mercedes, mostly because of, I don't know, whatever reason. But like, she's definitely, as far as in-ring goes, she's definitely has exceeded, my expectations with what I expected from her coming out of WWE.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad to see that. So, I fully expect a good match here. I'd be shocked if it weren't.
Venkin mentions people will always praise Momo for her extra effort during 5-star and big matches, and that's she is an excellent big match wrestler. That's a good way of putting it. And this is about as big as it gets. She's main eventing Capital Collision. So
the way I look at it with Mercedes Mone is that she and a lot of other people will tell you that she is one of the best wrestlers in the world. And that is an argument that you can make. I'm not necessarily sure that I would make that argument. But what she is immensely talented at is making a match that doesn't seem like a big deal into a big deal. Whether she is a great wrestler is irrelevant to the part of her being able to market herself and a match bigger than it actually is. And for that, I give her all the credit.
All right. So before we let Larry go here, because we got a little bit of Tanahashi history to go, but Larry, I have to ask you one very basic question about Japan. What was the best thing you ate?
Okay, that's a great question because I had to bring up that I went to Mr. Danger's Steakhouse, Matsunaga, the other deathmatch wrestler.
Really? Oh my gosh.
It was the best steak I've ever had in my life. It was unbelievable. Wow. I should have, you know what, if I would have known you would ask that question, I should have taken the picture of the food I had because I took the picture of it. It doesn't look like much. It was like corn and, there was some soup or whatever, but it was the most tender meat. They tell you it's the most tender meat. I'm like, are you sure? And I was skeptical, but I'm telling you, it was the most tender meat I've ever had. So if you go, there's 2 locations. If you go 100%, you got to go to Mr. Danger's Steakhouse. Believe it or not, I didn't go to Robera because it was out of the way from where we were. So that's just another stop I'll have to go next time I go.
I will vouch for Ribera. I did go to Ribera when I was there, but I haven't been to Mr. Danger. So now maybe when I go back, I'll go over there.
I highly recommend it. It's cool because it's a small place. There's just a counter for maybe like 8 people. So you might have to sit outside for a minute until it's your turn. But, oh, man, my mouth is watering thinking about it.
Well, I mean, he has a lot of experience with fire. Unfortunately, some of it is on his own head, which is at one point, I don't remember. It was Mr. Pogo that poured the lighter fluid on his head and blew a fireball and lit his entire head on fire during a match right there. So he's been through a lot. So cooking steaks is definitely, a much safer gig for Matsunaga. I'm glad he's doing well with it.
Oh, yeah. It's so good. Yeah, definitely go.
Larry Sternshein, I want to thank you once again for coming on to our show today. It was fantastic to get your insight on your experience on the G1, and it made for a great time for all of us. Go ahead and plug your stuff one more time for everyone that was doing your thing, and then we are going to send you on your way, my friend.
Yeah, thank you so much again for having me on. This was really cool, and thanks again for a lot of the knowledge that helped me really have fun with the G1. And I'll keep listening, and I'm not getting rid of my New Japan World subscription.
Excellent.
Because I got to see what happens. So I have a podcast, again, called Real Early. It's a movie podcast interviewing people about movies. You can find it Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, the website. I'm on Twitter at Real Early Pod. There's, I'm Double H55. You can get me there. I'm all over the place. Yeah, Viking Media Discord.
And just to clarify, that's real as REEL for the people that are listening as a podcast. REEL early.
It's a little too clever sometimes when I say it. But when you look at it, like, oh, I get it.
There you go. All right, Larry, thanks once again. Guys. First of all, we're really happy that you got a chance to do this. It's a really exciting thing that you got to go to the semifinals and finals. We really appreciate you taking the time to share those experiences with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, take care.
See ya.
Take care, Larry.
All right, Jeremy. So that was great. I'm really glad that we had that, and just more examples of how the best way to see any of this stuff is live. So if you get a chance to see New Japan in person in your area as they travel around and do these strong shows in the United States, or if you get a chance to go to Japan, definitely recommend it. There's nothing like wrestling live. I fell in love with wrestling on TV. It wasn't until no one came to South Bend, Indiana, where I was growing up for a few years there. And then once I saw it live, I mean, I was already hooked, but seeing wrestling live was just the greatest. And any chance you get to see a big event like that, it'll change you.
Thanks again to Larry Sternshein. He already took off, but he gave a lot of insight and really just was an illuminating and fascinating conversation about what it's like to go check out wrestling in Japan. Because I've seen a ton of shows in the States and all over the country. It can be different from place to place, but I am chomping at the bit to have the Japan experience at one point. Well, speaking of the Japan experience, you've got some experiences about Tanahashi you want to tell us about.
Well, when we last left off with Hiroshi Tanahashi last week, we mentioned that he was just recovering from being stabbed by his girlfriend, went through that whole controversy. Now, before all that had happened, he had spent most of the first 3 years of his career doing fine. Not lighting the world on fire, long time as a young lion, didn't really go on excursion. Important thing to note. So he was just always there in with New Japan, and he had worked his way up a little bit. He was in a tag team that was working with Kenzo Suzuki, starting to work his way up. Then had the whole thing with his girlfriend where he had the incident where he was stabbed and missed a few months. He had a collapsed lung and anyway missed the January 4th show, which was still a thing. One called Wrestle Kingdom, but it was still a thing in 2003. Thing is, again, him almost being killed by his girlfriend ended up in a weird way working in his favor because the fans, first of all and foremost, the talent was starting to show through. People started to see, okay, this guy can wrestle. But what it did was it almost made him realize that, like, geez, we almost lost this guy. And it wasn't pity that made them react to him, but it was just like, oh, geez, we didn't almost have Tanahashi for a while. We're glad he's here. So when he came back in the opening night of the opening event of a card, but he was in there against Manabu Nakanishi, who's a very real star. He lost, but that was in February 16th of 2003. But it was treated as a special match, labeled a Tanahashi return match. And it was in Sumo Hall in front of 10,000 fans, so right where Larry just was right there. I thought this was interesting, too. Second match on that card, by the way, Jeremy, was Makabe beating Toru Yano, very young Toru Yano, in under 4 minutes. So just a quick night. So quick Yano match, go figure, right? But back then it was just because he was doing jobs at the moment for Makabe. His tag team with Suzuki was gone. Kenzo, that was over with already, but they had different plans for Tanahashi. He rejoined the crew full-time in March for the Hyper Battle series. Hyper Battle was the series it was called. And New Japan decided to create an under 30 championship. So this is for young wrestlers. So an under 30 title. To establish it, they held a G2 tournament. So we have the G1 tournament. Now we have the G2 tournament, which is for the younger guys.
Already sounds secondary.
Well, but it is. But it's an under 30 title, right? So the whole idea is, yes, it's a secondary belt. Makabe was in the tournament, and so was Yutaka Yoshi, who was another one of the guys that they were grooming for future stardom. Tanahashi beat Yoshi in the semifinals and then beat Makabe, who had been an antagonist to his ever since his career began. His first match was a loss to Makabe, but he defeated Makabe in the finals April 23 in Hiroshima and captured the under 30 title. So for the first time, Tanahashi was a champion within New Japan. He proceeded to hold that title for nearly 2 years, about 20 months he had it. He had 12 defenses in those 20 months or so not a ton of defenses, but it was a start. His first championship in Japan. 2003 would end up being a very eventful year for him. In May, he faced Hiroyoshi Tenzan in the Dome for Ultimate Crush. Ultimate Crush was one of the frequent Dome events they had back then. And he wrestled Hiroyoshi Tenzan in a match to determine a new number 1 contender for the IWGP title. So we're moving up pretty quickly. I mean, this is a guy who was not on after intermission very often before all this. And this was before intermission, too. It was the opening match. But it was the opening match of a Dome show. And that show drew 55,000 people. It featured a lot of MMA matches, too. So I'm bringing this up for a reason. It drew well, 55,000, no question about it. Josh Barnett was on the show. Lyoto Machida, if you remember him from UFC. Ken Shamrock, of course, the legend from early days of UFC and, of course, later in WWE and all that. It drew very well, but things were beginning to show signs of going wrong. What I mean by that is this show that was a mix of pro wrestling matches and MMA fights were starting to wear down the crowd a little bit. Kenta Kobashi defeated Masachono in a GHC title match on this one. So they were bringing over Noah guys. Toshihiro Takayama, who was a K1 guy and a Pride fighting guy. I think more Pride, actually, than K1. But he and Yuji Nagata had an NWF title. That's Antonio Inoki's old belt. Versus IWGP title match. Takayama won and took both titles. But what you had was this mix of, okay, here's the real fights. and here are the fake ones, right? And within its own context, a pro wrestling show is presented as if these are real battles, of course, right? And when it's not thrown in your face that it isn't, you can play along. And pro wrestling show within its own structure, you can kind of get into it. It's a challenge, though, Jeremy, when you're sitting there watching real fights under Vale Tudo rules. And of course, pro wrestling doesn't look anything like that, right? You know, so you're watching something that's real, and then you're seeing something that starts to look pretty fake next to it. There's a reason these things are kept separate. And so they had all these real fights in there as MMA was taking off, and it was certainly taking off in Japan, wildly popular. Pride, K1, all these other companies. And Inoki, who was still very much an influence in New Japan, felt that that was the direction they needed to go. I mean, he always worked ideas of MMA in there, and Inoki always presented himself as a real quote-unquote fighter. But a pro wrestling show with MMA on it and things just looks awkward. And while this one drew well, 55,000, you would start to see the attendance numbers at the Dome show starting to drop after this. This was the kind of the beginning of dark days ahead, but he was on that show as in a number one contenders match. Now, Tanahashi and Yukata Yoshi then became a regular team. This was going to become important to Tanahashi as well. On June 13th of that year, he and Yoshi defeated Chono and Tenzan and captured the IWGP tag team titles. And that was in front of 8,500 people. So now he's the under 30 champion. Now he's teaming with Yoshi. They put him over Chono and Tenzan, who are some of the bigger stars of that era. And he's the IWGP tag team champion now. He goes into the G1 tournament that year as one half of the tag team champions. But he finished dead last in the A block. 4 points. Jun Akiyama from Noah won the block, by the way, and Tenzan finished second in the A block, but ultimately won the tournament, beating Akiyama in the finals. You know, they had the semifinalists and finalists and things. So, meaning if you finished second in your block, you also advanced. But and Tenzan came back and got his win back over the Noah guy there in the finals. So not an auspicious G1 in 2003, but he's in there, and it's the second one in a row. So at this point, he's the under 30 champion, half the tag team champions. Shinsuke Nakamura is starting to come around too. And so he and Yoshi entered the G1 Tag League as the tag team champions. And this was a little weird thing, Jeremy. They had their tournament block match against Mike Barton, who you remember was Bart Gunn, and Jim Steele. It was Jungle Jim Steele from WCW. That was an IWGP tag team title match and their block match. But their other block matches weren't IWGP tag team title matches. I don't know why. But they decided that the Barton and Steele match was actually a tag team title match. And they wiped out the 30-minute time limit for it. And it went over a half an hour. That match did. And Yoshi and Tanahashi ended up retaining. So they did not, I don't know why either. They didn't defend, or they didn't win the G1 Tag League. They finished fourth in the tournament, as a matter of fact, but they came out of it with the championship and having defended the belts once. Go figure. But they were kept fairly strong. Tanahashi was starting to really gain momentum here as a tag team wrestler because he and Yuji Nagata went to Noah on November 3rd in Hokkaido and defeated Kenta Kobashi and Tamon Honda to win the GHC tag team titles. So as we get to very early December of 2003, he's the under 30 champion, he's the IWGP tag champion, and he's the GHC tag team champion with a different partner. So lots going on for Tanahashi now. The days of coming on first or second are over with. December of that year, he defeated Naomichi Marufuji from Noah to defend that under 30 title, but he and Yoshi did not quite make it back to the Dome. They dropped the tag team titles December 14th to Tenzan and Osamu Nishimura. So in 2004, began with him defending his title against his tag team partner Yoshi, and that was about halfway up the January 4th Tokyo Dome card. But Shinsuke Nakamura had passed him by and main evented that year, beating Takayama to win the NWF and IWGP titles. So good news and bad news here. No longer first, and certainly better than being out with a collapsed lung. But your contemporary, your rival, Shinsuke Nakamura, just main evented the Dome. So that had to eat at him a little bit. He's not quite at that level yet, but still being thought of, right? January 10th, they dropped the GHC titles to Mitsuharu Misawa and Yoshinari Ogawa. So we did get a little crossover between two of the all-time greats right there, where Misawa and Tanahashi shared a ring and a tag team title switch. So Nakamura ended up getting injured, by the way. This is going to be important to show where Tanahashi is on the ladder. He had to vacate the IWGP title. So in February, they had a match. They had a tournament, a small tournament to determine a new champion. Tanahashi defeated the former champion Takayama. That's the guy that lost it to Nakamura. So he's defeating a former IWGP and NWF champion in the first round, lost in the semifinals to Genichiro Tenryu, who's one of the all-time legends. Mm-hmm. So again, not too bad. Tenryu was a little bit older, but Tenzan ended up winning the tournament, but now he's starting to sniff around the IWGP title. He's beating former champions. More on the progression. Now, there was chaos with the IWGP title in 2004. Bob Sapp ended up winning the IWGP title. Then he lost a K1 match, a real fight, to Kazuyuki Fujita. Why do we care about this? Well, because Sapp had to vacate the IWGP title. They had a match to determine a new champion, and it was Fujita, the K1 guy who defeated Bob Sapp, against Tanahashi. So it was K1 versus New Japan, and they chose Tanahashi to represent New Japan in that match, which Fujita won. So once again, he's getting within very close sniffing distance to that IWGP title. And to get you an idea how crazy the title was that year, you know how often we see IWGP world title changes? Very rarely, right? In 2004, the title was vacated twice and had 6 changes in those 12 months. So the IWGP title was bouncing around all over the place. He entered the 2004 G1. And this saw Tanahashi break through again. This time he wins Block B with 12 points. He went 6-1 in the tournament. His only loss was in block play to Tenzan. Then he defeated Tenryu in the semifinals, so he got his win back against Tenryu. Remember, he faced Tenryu in the finals of the tournament to determine a new champion earlier this year. Got that win back, but then he lost to Tenzan in the finals of the G1. So Tenzan won another G1 there. And we're getting into more familiar territory. His partners are people like Yuji Nagata. I mentioned Yukata Yoshi. Hiroki Goto shows up as his partner, who is relatively new to New Japan. He would be facing eventual rivals like Nakamura, Toru Yano, Chono, and Katsuyori Shibata. He even teamed for a tournament with Taiji Ishimori back then. Ishimori coming over from Noah at the time. He got another IWGP title shot against Kensuke Sasaki in November, but didn't win it. Then he and Nakamura began teaming together. So they defeated, this is an interesting match here, Jeremy. Shinsuke Nakamura and Hiroshi Tanahashi defeated Minoru Suzuki and Kensuke Sasaki to win the IWGP tag team titles on December 11th in Osaka. So now he's a 2-time IWGP tag team champion, still has the under 30 title, and he's teaming with Shinsuke Nakamura. In both storyline and behind the scenes, not the best of friends. Nakamura and Tanahashi, it was always professional. There was never anything like, fights breaking out or anything like that. But they rubbed each other the wrong way. And you can read it in the book of Nakamura's book. It's like these two just are different people. They're just different people. And so they used that tension. And while they were the tag team champions, and while they were partners, at the January 5th Tokyo Dome show, January 4th, 2005, they main evented the Dome show, Nakamura versus Tanahashi. And so it was the tag team champions wrestling each other. They were on top for the under 30 title, since they both were. And Nakamura defeated Tanahashi for the under 30 title that night. So they were still the tag team champions. And Nakamura was still half a step ahead of Tanahashi at this point, because he's the one that went over in the Dome. So this is the second year in a row Nakamura's main evented. Now Tanahashi gets to that point, but Nakamura went over. and they were still the tag team champions. And there was also a tournament underneath that and things that drew pretty well, but it was 46,000 in the dome for that show. So again, it went from 45,000 to 46, not a huge drop, but they're no longer just packing it solid like they had been before.
Right.
Like some of this MMA stuff, and it was a submission tournament that was underneath it. So they were having like 2-minute long matches with Yuji Nagata, and they had Ron Waterman, who had been in OVW, and some of these former MMA guys that they were bringing in and doing very short submission only match tournament before they led up to this thing. So still some of that MMA mix that didn't quite work was getting in there, and the crowd was a little bit smaller. But nevertheless, when we leave off for today, because we are running out of time here, Tanahashi has become a 2-time tag team champion. He's teaming with and wrestling against Shinsuke Nakamura. He has now headlined a January 4th Tokyo Dome show, and he is ready to become the icon and start to work his way up that card and get closer and closer to that IWGP heavyweight title that has thus far eluded him. So a very strong 2 years after a slow-ish start, and then a near miss health-wise. So things looking up for the Ace.
Climbing the ascent after the valleys of almost dying. Stephen almost dying.
Yeah, pretty crazy stuff. So that's we'll have more as on Tanahashi's development next time.
Yeah, so we got our show tomorrow after Capital Collision. We'll be back next week, potentially with another guest. We will finalize that soon. And we got Chris Charlton reminding us to enjoy the action.
Yeah.
Even
and of course, remember, again, live show tomorrow night. So make sure you're back here for that. So we talk about Capital Collision and all the news that comes out of that show. We'll be back here at our regular time next Thursday. And then, of course, don't forget Power Bombshell Sunday at 1 p.m. And make sure you do the likes, the subscribes, all that stuff for all the great content for Fight Game Media Network. This is a great time to listen to the 5-Star Joshi Show because they're talking about the 5-Star Grand Prix. We've got the Dynamite Show as we come away from All Out and we're heading into the next pay-per-view. So there's always fascinating things going on the Fight Game Media Network.
Yep. This was a fantastic episode. We went a little long, but I think we got a lot of good stuff out of it. So happy with that.
As always, thank you very much for spending your time with us here. To all the people who watch us live, all the people who listen later as a podcast, make sure you rate and review us, leave us a 5-star review, all those goodies. But man, we're really happy that you spent a little bit of time with us this week, and we'll be back very soon. So with that in mind, for Jeremy Finestone, I'm Stephen Conway. This has been Speaking of Strong Style. We'll talk to you again real soon.